Hey guys, it's Tuesday, so we're gonna do a tip video. I've got my T-positive albino batik blood python with me. You'll actually see this animal's sister in an upcoming video that I'll share. We did some blood and short tail stuff at Dylan's place, and that was a joint breeding project between us, so he has her sister. And she actually tried to bite me while we were filming. She doesn't remember where she came from. Happens to the best of us. Also, just want to say thank you for you guys for the views in the last video. It's already the second best video I've done, and it's only been up for a couple of days, so that's awesome. Much appreciated. So we'll do a tip video today. I'll do the Meet the Collection segment on Thursday, and then I'll upload another video from Dylan's on Saturday. And maybe if I have time on Sunday, I'll pop on and do something live so I can get some feedback on future stuff. So what we're going to jump into tonight, a lot of times I ask on my Instagram for ideas. I got all kinds of stuff, but somebody had mentioned switching over to frozen thawed, which is a question that I get asked all the time. All of my animals do feed on frozen thawed. You know, I have a couple of babies that I still haven't switched over, which is just me being busy and not doing. But every single one of my animals that I have in my collection feeds on it without problem. So the first step to switching over your animal's prey is to understand your animals and to understand what it is that triggers a feed response, and also to make sure that your husbandry and your enclosure has your animal comfortable. Snakes, when they're feeding, that's their most vulnerable time during and after while they're digesting food. So the more comfortable your animal is in its enclosure and the more comfortable it is in its husbandry, then the better feeder you're going to have. That's, parts, 1, 2, and 3 of what you need to do is you really need to have your setup to where the snake's comfortable, not what you like, what they like. Sometimes that may mean less space. Sometimes it may mean more space. Sometimes it may mean more hides, less hides, whatever it is that makes your animal comfortable so that they're a steady feeder and they're not refusing meals. Typically, these guys are opportunistic. They're designed to eat when food is available to them, which sadly people take advantage of. But your snakes really shouldn't be refusing meals if you're feeding a proper diet, proper frequency, and you have them in a comfortable environment. So make sure that's dialed in. That's going to make the whole switchover process much easier regardless of what species you're doing. The more comfortable they are, the more apt they are to eat a prey item, especially a new prey item to them. So one of the things that drives me crazy in talking to people is they're like, well, I feed live to my snake because it's natural. That's fine, but realistically, constrictors, venomous snakes, these animals kill their prey before they eat it. So what's actually natural to them is to eat dead prey. Many of these species too have been observed eating carrion in the wild, stuff that they didn't kill themselves. I've seen everything from Nerodia do that on up through python species. So it's a very common thing. There's videos of it out there you can see where people have come across animals that are eating stuff that's rotting, whatever else. Not recommending feeding rotting prey, but just noting that they kill everything before they eat it for their own safety. So that is natural for them to take dead prey. We're just skipping the step of the animal killing it when we're feeding them frozen thawed prey. And sometimes our animals will still constrict frozen thawed or pre-killed because they're still going through that steps. Most of my blood pythons aren't that way. You drop the prey on the floor, they go over and eat it. These guys will strike off tongue, some of them won't ever. It's just not something that they do. Really depends on the individual animal and things like that. And that can change from time to time. You can have an animal that hasn't struck food in 8 years and all of a sudden one day, it's just extra hungry and it will strike. So don't ever assume, even if it's an animal that's never done it before, that it won't. Always protect yourself and, protect your animal when you're feeding. So anyhow, in teaching them and looking for ways to convert, one of the things that can help you is, depending on the species, or even your individual snake, pay attention to when your snake is active, when it appears to be hunting and looking for food. For these guys, evening time is when they're really looking for food. So, depending on the time of year, obviously the light cycle's different, things like that. But typically between like 7 p.m. and like 11 p.m. is like your ideal time to feed these guys. What you can do if you're trying to introduce them is wait for that time, wait for them to be active and out. You can also scent the room in advance. This can be done with frozen thawed prey. Some people will even thaw the food in the same room as the snake. I know I thaw like 2 to 3 rooms away from where my snakes are, and within an hour or so of food thawing, you can see the activity level increases in the room. They can smell it even from a few rooms away. So if you do it in there, it's really going to send out that smell and that signal. And as they get more familiar with the frozen thawed, it's really, really going to get them going. My snakes actually don't even react. I can bring live rodents in the room and they don't even associate that with food at all, just because it's not something that they eat. Now, I'm not saying if I put a live rodent in, they all won't take it. Some of them won't, some of them will, but they just don't react. They're trained to that smell. They know that that's when they're going to eat, and that's what they associate. So we can use these little triggers to help them learn. So scenting the room can be something that can be accomplished. Like I said, thawing the food in there. If you do breed your own rodents or you have live and you're going to do pre-killed, you can put the animal in the room with them for a little while beforehand, get that smell in there. Even dirty rodent bedding can accomplish this and get that smell in the air. I know it stinks for those of us that maybe keep our reptiles in our bedroom or in our living room or whatever. But this isn't something you're going to have to do every time. This is just stuff when you're trying to get them into the process. It may take once, it may take 10 or 20 times. Many people just give up too easily, or don't try enough things, or don't pay attention to their animals and read their animal signals that are telling them what's triggering them for food. So some animals, it's movement. Some animals, it's temperature. Some animals, it's smell. Some animals, it's the visual, whatever. There's all kinds of different triggers, and that's not only per species, but it's per individual animal. Like I said, I have some animals that will not touch live. I have some that want to take off of tongs, some that don't want to take off of tongs. So it's just learning your individual animal and learning what kicks that instinct in for them, that this is a food item and that it's time to eat. Another trick that you can do when you are offering off of tongs, instead of holding the prey by the tail or by the back, hold it by like the spine area, maybe midway down. Gives the animal a more natural appearance, and also if you're jiggling a little bit, it gives it a little more natural movement. So if your snake is one of those that's triggered by movement, and by that it's going to present that a lot more naturally for the animal, excuse me, which will help them, trigger that food response. If you seem to think that your animal's temperature sensitive and it's recognizing food by the heat signature, you have your temp gun, hopefully, as we all should. You could temp gun a live rat and see what the head temperature is on a few of them, and then use hot water after you're done thawing and all that, and you can dip the head of the prey item in there. Some animals, the water will put them off, some it won't. So if that is something you're concerned about, put the head in a plastic bag first and then dip it in the water. When it gets to the desired temperature, then you can offer the prey item. Another thing that you can do if the animal's nervous, especially with you. Sometimes the animals are nervous about our presence, and so that's putting them off of food. So if your animal has a hide or whatever kind of enclosure you're using, you can show them the prey item on the tongs to make sure that they see it and smell it, and then leave it either in front of them a little bit or leave it in front of their hide. Turn the lights off in the room, leave them alone for like an hour. Go back and check. If they haven't eaten it, you can heat the head back up a little bit, show it to them again, leave it for a little while longer, and you can leave it as long as overnight. Just make sure you write something down or remind yourself and go and check, because you don't want a rotting carcass in your snake's cage if it's not going to eat it. I personally don't recommend refreezing prey items. Some people do it. They do say that it is safe to do once, but like anything else, the freezing process has its dangers if you don't do it properly. So doing it multiple times is just kind of increasing that risk. Plus, if you've left the prey item out all night, I definitely don't recommend refreezing that, because now at that point, decomposition has taken place to some extent. It's best to just, if you have a monitor, throw it to the monitor. If you don't have something like that, then for me, I live in the woods. I'll throw it out in the woods and let the local wildlife clean it up. I have coyotes and stuff here, raccoons, possums, so they'll all take that stuff. Otherwise, if you live in a city or something, you can just discard it in the trash. So try that, and don't be afraid to mix things up and try different things if it's not working. I would recommend staying consistent for 2 or 3 feedings before you change things up, because these animals are learning and they don't always pick things up the first time. So sometimes, it's a little bit of a process. With especially difficult snakes where they really don't seem to be transitioning, what you can do is get a live prey item that's a little bit smaller than their typical meal. Get a frozen thawed prey item of the same size, a little bit smaller than their typical meal, or pre-killed, whatever it is you're trying to convert to. Offer them the live prey. Once they're done eating and they get to that point where you see the food's going down and the tongue flicks start again, and you'll notice that, you know, as soon as they're done swallowing, it'll be still going down, but it'll be down far enough to where those tongue flicks come back and they start to move a little bit more normally. Offer the frozen thawed prey item at that point. At that point, they're in that feeding mode. They're in that mode where they're going to eat. And so sometimes doing that, they'll take that prey item that they wouldn't normally take. And that's a way that you can start to transition them and get them to realize that that is a food source and that is something that's that. Because that's all we're trying to do is just help them identify that that's a food source. They're not refusing it because, you know, they don't want it frozen thawed. They're refusing it because they're not identifying that that is food for them. So what we want to do is help them understand that. So that's something you can do as well. And the reason you're doing a little bit smaller prey items is you're giving them 2 prey items instead of 1. So you want to take it easy on their digestive system and not overload them. So it's just a way to do that and to still keep things square. This guy's being gracious sitting here. It's kind of a blood and short tail thing, but you figure this tail hanging down, he might like get a little annoyed and want to move around. But he's pretty chill. He's pretty relaxed. He doesn't ever give me any problems. It's kind of funny too. He lives here with me. His sister's been with Dylan for I don't know how long, shortly after hatch, you know, because we split the clutch since it was a joint effort. I went over to see his female this weekend. This male has like a tiny piece of stuck shed on one part of his neck. His sister had the same thing. So it's kind of funny, 2 snakes that have been raised completely different, away from each other, not even in the same state, have stuck shed at the same time in the same spot. And I've noticed that with siblings that I keep, they seem to shed at the exact same time or within a week of each other, you know, almost throughout their lives, unless you really do something outside of the ordinary, like, you know, breeding or something like that. So it's pretty crazy how that works. You know, these snakes have been separated for, you know, at least over a year, longer than that, I believe, and still on the same cycles. Anyhow, any questions with the feeder stuff, let me know. Like I said, we're going to do another video Thursday and then another one on Saturday I'll upload. Saturday will be a really cool video, so you'll definitely want to check that out. We did his Burmese python collection, I believe will be the next video. And there's a really cool berm at the end of that you guys probably haven't seen very often, if at all. So it'll be worth checking that out. All right, we'll see you guys. As always, thank you. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Feel free to share my videos anytime. I am trying to build this channel up and get more information out there. So every time you share these videos, it definitely helps. So my buddy here and I are out, and we'll see you.